Welcome to Coffee with the Supervisor. My special, and I mean special guest, is Ray Tierney, the District Attorney of Suffolk County. Ray, welcome.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks for having me.
It's great. I know your office handles a great deal. And the primary purpose of your office is to protect all of us and to make sure that the wrongdoers are brought to justice. And I'm sure if we had hours, you could tell us all the wrongdoers that you have brought to justice. And there is something in that to know that people are going to be held accountable when they do wrong and that justice is going to be done. So, biggest case so far?
Well, I mean, I think, there's been so many. And, I think I'll tell you about the most recent big case,
Sure.
which is the Valva case.
Absolutely.
8-year-old Thomas and his 10-year-old brother Anthony were abused by the boy's father and his girlfriend. And we were able to, with great collaboration, great work with the Suffolk County Homicide Squad, Suffolk County Police Department. They did a great job. They brought us a great case. We worked it. We improved it. We presented it to the jury. Our team did a great job, and we were able to get a small measure of justice for those boys.
Let me tell you how important that is. That case struck a lot of people. Particularly struck me. Thomas sat next to my grandson in the 3rd grade.
Oh.
They went to the East Mauritius School, which my grandson goes to. And my stepdaughter had to tell him that his classmate had died. And we had heard stories of him coming to school, begging for food, looking abused, in clothing that was less than presentable. And we wondered why, because I happen to know the principal there, whose father used to work for the county. And apparently he made a number of calls, as did the teacher, to Child Protective Services, and that wasn't addressed.
Well, I can tell you this. I said, the East Mauritius School, they really, the kindness and warmth and love that those boys received, especially Thomas at the end of his life, that came from that school. And they really went above and beyond, and I want to thank them for that. And they did try to go through the system to find those boys help. That help did not come. So as we've been talking about, Michael Valva, the father, his story is over. He's been sentenced to 25 years to life. His girlfriend has been sentenced to 25 years to life. So their stories are over. But the story of Thomas continues. And we're going to investigate, and we're going to get to the bottom of what happened, and we're going to take evidence and make recommendations to try to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again.
Which is the great thing about your office, because it's not only this case, but a lot of other cases, where not only do you seek to convict, but you also seek to uncover facts where you make recommendations for changes that are going to protect all of us. And that's the great thing about the District Attorney's Office.
Yeah, there's so many things, about the District Attorney's Office. Obviously, it's about prosecuting cases. It's about people who would seek to harm our residents, to hold them accountable. Sometimes that means jail. But it means education, it means outreach, it means doing investigations to try to make sure that the entities that are set up to try to help our residents and our citizens are actually doing that. So there's never a lack of work at the District Attorney's Office.
I can understand that. And I guess your job has made it a little bit more difficult with some of the bail reform laws that the state has passed.
Well, it's funny that you should mention that, Ed, because when I ran, I've been a prosecutor going on probably 30 years now in the state and federal level, and my thing is, it's like being an athlete.
Right.
When you play a sport and the ref is, you can't complain about the refs. Right. You just gotta go out there and you gotta get it done. And so when I ran, I said that's what we're going to do in my office, and that's what we do.
Right.
We don't make excuses. We work with these laws. We work within the framework of these laws, and I think we get great results. But having said that, as I got in there, a lot of these laws, they began with a lie. And the lie was these laws will help to make us more safe. That's not true. So number one, I'm going to say it. And number two, working with our partners in government, we're going to work to change those laws to enact common sense laws that make sense. Number one, they make sense. Number two, and most importantly, they help to keep us safe. And I'll give you a real quick example, a death by dealer statute, and also with our bail reform, a fentanyl. If you deal fentanyl in Suffolk County, we cannot seek to hold you in on bail under the current system.
Wow.
So we need to adopt a dangerousness statute, a standard in our bail reform, in our bail laws. And, I could go on and on about this, Ed. There are so many things that we can change. But again, working with our partners in government, all of our partners in government, talking about this stuff, debating it, I think we can get there, and I think we will get there.
Well, count me as a partner, because one of the things that you educated me about is if a police officer stopped you and he felt you were under the influence of some drug, but it wasn't a drug that was on an adopted list, he could not arrest you or detain you. And I found that like, are you kidding me? If the guy's under the influence of a drug, it's affecting his driving skills or his reasoning skills, but it's not on an approved list. Talk a little bit about I'm talking about common sense
Ed,
things.
you're absolutely right, and you make a great, that's a great point. So our laws are archaic. So we have a driving while impaired by drugs law, and there is a list promulgated by the Department of Health, and the drug has to be on that list.
And if it's not?
So in other words, if a person is taking cocaine, right, it's on the list, so we could charge them with driving while impaired by drugs. But say they're they're under the influence of a drug called nitocene or rohypnol, because they're not on that list, we can't prosecute them. They're not any less dangerous. In fact, they're probably more dangerous. But because they're not on that list, we can't charge them with that crime. And it gets even worse, Ed, because when the police go to charge them, they have to tell the accused what drug they're on. So in other words, if the police says, we believe this person is on cocaine, and they charge him with that, and then a blood test comes back and it turns out he's on fentanyl, that case gets dismissed. It's gamesmanship, and it has nothing to do with the safety of our citizens, and it needs to get changed.
Well, that's a shame, because that's not a discouragement to people that are taking these drugs. I don't know where the governor is. I don't know where our state legislators are. But I hope they're listening to yourself and other DAs that have been pushing for these changes, because this is a danger to our society. We need to create a safer state. Many people are leaving New York State, and of course they cite, the fact that too much congestion, quality of life, but crime is one of the major things that people are concerned about, and they're fleeing, because particularly to the city of New York, in which crime seems to be more prevalent, there's a concern about the quality of life.
Well, I can tell you this. I think we're fortunate in Suffolk County because we have to operate under some these difficult laws. But I'm fortunate as the DA because, as you know, as the town supervisor, not only do we work great with the town of Brookhaven, and I thank you for that. We work great with our other supervisors. We work great with our legislators across the board. Our citizens, they're concerned about public safety. I think our public officials are concerned about public safety, and we need to continue that. I think the problem is, in Albany, there is a supermajority, and they just refuse, at this point, to really engage in that dialogue that we need, that discussion, to talk about what do we need to change in our law to make sure that people are being safe. So, I love the support we get from Suffolk County, and I thank you for your support. But we need to replicate that up in our state legislature.
We need common sense to prevail. We need common sense to prevail. And if you live a life, even a long life, you come to understand that some things work and some things don't. Doing away with bail, I understand the purpose of it, but then you look at the result, and then you know that, oops, well, maybe we went too far in doing away with bail laws. Maybe we have to, particularly for the career criminal, the repeat guy, maybe we have to rethink those things. And I hope the state legislature is doing that.
I think at first off, it has a cascading effect. So number one, we want, as a prosecutor, the only thing that we care about is this person going to get out and hurt somebody else? No. God forbid. So if you're talking about a dangerous individual, we should be able to argue that, and if it's appropriate, keep that person in on bail, hold him on bail as a result of dangerousness. But that's just the beginning, because what happens with bail reform, there's a cascading effect. And so all of our resources are being stretched thin with our misdemeanor practice, our quality of life practice. It's all the resources are being spent on the violent crimes. A lot of these misdemeanor crimes, police can't even process arrests. We can't ask for bail. And the first time that the defendant doesn't show up to court, we can't even ask for a warrant. So these cases pile up. And they become more and more difficult to prosecute. Discovery reform, we have to get all the paperwork out in a very abbreviated amount of time.
Less than 30 days.
Yes. And so on most cases, absolutely. And so what we have to do, and what we have been doing, is we have to lean on our partnerships. We have to lean on our partnership in town government. We have to lean on our partnership in county government to help assist us. And number one, in like a town of Brookhaven, what we really need to do, especially with quality of life crimes, is we need to talk to our police, we need to talk to our town officials, and we need to figure out who are the recidivists, who are the individuals who are really negatively affecting our quality of life in our communities, and we need to focus our already stretched resources on those individuals to make sure that we're being as effective as possible, and that's where our partners come in.
What I've seen, and at least as supervisor in my years in government, is a few people commit a lot of crimes. Not a lot of people committing crimes. It's a few people, but they commit these crimes multiple times. And it's a shame.
You're absolutely right. When I was in the Brooklyn DA's office, I was an executive assistant district attorney in charge of crime strategies, and you do the research, and what you see is it's less than 1% of the population that are committing the crimes. And so when you talk about seeking to put people in jail, seeking to hold people responsible, seeking to be tough on defendants. Those are the defendants you're talking about. And then you talk about criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform is great. Any system that is run by men and women can be reformed. So I'm all for criminal justice reform, but if you don't deal with that small proportion of violent actors, it's a non-starter.
And it's a shame, because it is a very small proportion of the general population that repeatedly commit crimes. And if they're not stopped early on, and you talk about starting small, none of these, very few criminals start with major felonies. They start with misdemeanors and then move their way up when they don't see that they're going to be held accountable or pay that great of a price. They're willing to run a risk of committing more crimes.
Well, I'll give you a real quick example. So when we started in the DA's office, we went back and we looked at all the violent crime, the gun crime, over the last 4 years, and what we found was Suffolk County is about 2,000, you probably know this better than me, 2,373 square miles or thereabouts. So in 22 square miles, which means less than 1% of the square mileage of Suffolk County, spread over about 9 communities, about 50% of the gun violence is occurring. And so when I look at that stat, so in these underserved communities, why is it okay for kids in those communities to go to bed and have to hear gunshots, whereas in other communities it's completely unacceptable? And the answer, of course, is it's not acceptable, and we need to make sure that all the people in all the communities are kept safe. And that's where my office, and that's where I come in, and we're going to work every day to make sure that people all across Suffolk County are kept safe.
Well, I want to thank you for that, because one of the things that you did is ShotSpotter in those 22 communities. I was originally, before I became I've been around for a while, but before I was supervisor, immediately before I was a legislator, and I voted for ShotSpotter. And it wasn't that it affected my district, because I represented Shelter Island, Southold, Riverhead, and all of Eastern Brookhaven. We really there weren't too many candidates for ShotSpotter, but I understood what that meant for other areas. And I think the first place we put ShotSpotter was North Belport. which is a concern. I used to represent that in the 80s at Gordon Heights, so I know that community pretty well. But even as a legislator representing a different area, I knew what that meant for the county, that we were going to send a very strong signal that if you're going to shoot guns off or use guns in commission of a crime, we're going to spot it right away, and we're going to send police, and we're eventually going to catch you.
Yeah, and when I went in and I looked and I saw the data, I said, look, we in these 9 communities spread over 22 miles, we need to implement ShotSpotter. And they said, well, the county's not going to want to do it. I said, they're going to want to do it. And we went to the town supervisors, such as yourself. We got their support. We went to the Suffolk County legislature. We got their support. And perhaps most importantly, we went to the communities themselves.
Right.
And we talked to the moms who lost their children as a result of gun violence. And we said, this is what we want to do. We got the support of everyone. We proposed it. And then we stood up and we said, who wants to debate this? Who's against this? Yeah. And suddenly no one was against it. So,
and you were able to redirect funding for this.
Yes, and again, yes, bipartisan support, a bipartisan monetary support, and it's a great thing. It's about to be implemented, and I really think that is going to really help us. Not only is it going to help us to investigate these cases, but when somebody gets shot, seconds matter. With ShotSpotter, the police and first responders will get there minutes faster, so it will save lives. And that, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
Very, very important. So what can we see for you in the future?
Well, we're going to continue. I have a great staff across the board, great support staff, great ADAs, great investigators, and we have great partnerships with primarily Suffolk County PD, but with our Sheriff's Department, we have and our federal law enforcement partners. So I'm blessed to be the District Attorney in Suffolk County, particularly. But we don't take anything for granted. It's an honor to serve Suffolk County. So we're going to do what we do, and that is get up every day and wait to get into work. Can't wait to do everything we can to keep people safe.
Well, I'm only the supervisor of Brookhaven, but I can tell you that I am a strong supporter of whatever your office needs to do its job, because when you do your job, we're all safer, and we have an even playing field in terms of justice for all.
I can tell you, Ed, you're and when I ran, you were one of the people that I leaned on, because I had never run for office before. Yeah, and I was a stranger in a strange land, and you helped me as a candidate, and you've continued to help my office. So
running
thank you
for
for
office
that.
is never easy,
No.
but in a democratic society, that's the way we do it. But I am so pleased that you're there, and you're protecting all of us. Thank you for making time to be on the show. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Thank you,
again.
Ed.